Okay.
Well, welcome to the Tuesday workshop at the Baker Growth community. Excited to have you both here. Naomi, you have a topic for us today, which is something that's been circling in your mind, and it's a little unformed, I think, last I heard.
Yeah. It's quite unformed, putting it lightly.
So let me preface this. I think that's okay. I don't think we have to bring formed topics to these communities, particularly as entrepreneurs, because an entrepreneur is always working on something new, working something out in a place they've never been before, gaining new understandings. So as I tell everybody, if you have something to say something and start anywhere, and we can take it from there.
Okay.
All right. Floor is yours.
Give me a train wreck. Here we go. It'll be a fun train wreck, though.
Who doesn't like a good train wreck?
Right? They're more entertaining to watch. Like
why we watch auto racing.
Yeah, it's also why you watch like reality TV.
Right. Yeah.
The train wrecks are more fun to watch than like
driving 500 miles in a circle. I want to see the wrecks.
Right. And when they come out of those wrecks on the other side,
right?
Oh, miracle, faith in God restored. It's amazing. So
there we go. Well, let's come out of this wreck alive.
Okay, hopefully. So yeah, basically it's about like professionalism in the workplace and how that can like. Sometimes I think, or a lot of times, I feel like people mistake professionalism for, not being upfront, and they use professionalism to, they use frivolous or fluffy words or professional sounding words to hide behind real information, which, yes, you want to be professional, but you also want to be transparent. That's kind of important, kind of, it's really important. And so the thought was, I was watching a video earlier today of a girl getting fired, and she said, like, she kept asking why she was getting fired, and they couldn't give her. She was like, I have been working really, really hard. I've been getting great feedback from my managers. This doesn't make sense to me. Can you guys give me a reason why I am being let go? And they said, we will not be able to give you an answer that would cause you to feel any differently than you're feeling right now. Unfortunately, we could go into more details later. She's like, after I don't work for the company anymore, that doesn't make any sense. Like they're trying to use words to save face, and people mistake saving face words with professional words. And I think there is a huge danger in that. And you need people to trust you, so there does need to be a sense of professionalism. But where is that line where you build trust with your team and with your coworkers? Versus putting up a front just to sound professional. I guess that it's being someone that is trustworthy and sounds stable, and someone that is respectable and professional, versus someone who is just full of nonsense, but saves face. They don't really have anything negative to say, but if there's no negativity, then is there any positivity? You know what I mean? Like if you can't say the real things that could get you, that people could have a negative reaction to, or that could be real or taken in a way that you might not want to deal with up front. If you're not willing to say those things and risk that lack of, I guess, losing face, if you're not willing to risk losing face, then are you really a professional, or are you just a cop-out? You know what I mean?
Let me hit this for just a second.
All right. Take it away.
Because I think the word professional needs to be clarified. What is it to be professional? Is it to be professional to tell every last detail? I don't think so.
No.
Is it to be professional to make sure we don't attack people's character, presume intentions, we stick to the facts? I think it's more along the tone. It's content certainly, but I think it's a lot of the tone of how we deliver messages. Are we respectful, kind, gracious, while also maintaining a root in the facts? I think that's what professionalism is. And so the idea I think of, and I think I know the video that you're talking about. It's sort of circling around now. Some lady sitting in front of a camera, and there's so she's being, she's recording her own firing, right?
Yep.
Number one, is it professional to record your firing? No. In fact, it's illegal in some states. You'd have to inform the other people that you're recording, certainly to make it public. So is that professional? Not at all. A violation of law, potentially. Also a signal to future employers that she might be, because she feels weird about something, might be not telling the truth to her coworkers or to her company, simply to protect whatever she feels about a certain scenario. So I think it's whereas I can argue on the other side, for instance, with the employer,
Right.
that there's all sorts of reasons that she does
Devil's
not need
advocate.
to know
Right.
what is going on, particularly because if she's doing that in this environment, whatever they're going to tell her, she just proved the point. Whatever they tell her, she's immediately going to make public to everyone's detriment. It would be like this. There's a theater filled with 1,500 people. A credible bomb threat is called into the management. Does the management go on stage, say, hey, we got to get everybody out here. There's a bomb threat. Exit, right? Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
It would be absolute pandemonium and chaos as people probably killed each other from attempting to exit. Whereas
Right.
it would be much more wise and professional to say, hey, you know what? Regrettably, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to close right now. What I do need you to do is, in a calm and orderly fashion, we just need you to head for the exits. We'll let you know when this, is going to be rescheduled. It would be much better for everybody to find out that there's a bomb threat after they're at home, after they're at home. So
Right.
in her case, it could be that the company has legal issues that they have not even told the investors yet. They can't even tell the investors that, hey, listen, we're going bankrupt this afternoon. We're going to let everybody go right now. And then we're going to make a public announcement. They can't make public announcements in some situations without certain processes and procedures. So there's a whole lot of missing information.
Right.
That she then thinks is, the reason she put it out there is, how dare they fire me without
Right.
telling me the reason? Do you break up with somebody and be like, here's the itemized reasons why you're a jackhole and I cannot stand your guts? No, you don't.
No,
You're just
because
like, you know
that'll
what?
give him a reason to argue and just
exactly.
compliment the face.
Right. You're just like, hey, you know what?
Shut
This
up.
isn't
I'm
working
done.
out.
Bye. Yeah.
It's probably me, even though you're like, it's not me.
It's
Right.
not you. It's me. I can't
Right.
stand you. I can't stand you.
What do you think, Paul?
This is a good topic, and my mind went in a couple of different directions. I think the first people I thought of with the story, as more of the details became apparent, is the police, right?
Mm.
Who wants to do the job of enforcing the law when a crowd of people is going to whip out their iPhones and micromanage?
Mhm.
It's a dirty job.
Yep.
To deal with criminals, to deal with all those unusual situations. Do they overstep their bounds and step into the area of police brutality? I'm sure they do. But on the other hand, I can't exactly blame them for standing by in so many situations these days after 2020 and just letting criminals do their thing, because unless there's you have to have a pretty watertight case of someone trying to detonate a bomb to knock down an entire building before you can justifiably stop them. If that person's just stealing from a liquor store or something, an enormous amount of the public is going to rush to their defense. And it's on camera. And it doesn't matter what you did or whether you followed procedures or whether, none of that matters.
Yep. Because the public's going to be judge, jury, and executioner.
So the court of public opinion,
It's intense.
the whole idea that the first thing that came to my mind is, if you're recording your own firing, you're probably being fired because you're the type of person who records their own firing.
Okay, but to be devil's advocate, topic was in the video. The topic was brought up by the video.
Right.
Because we could
I haven't
because we
watched
could
the video. I'm just
So
telling you what came to my mind first. I'm
Right,
not stating that's the way it is. That's just the very first thing that comes to me is, I
Right.
have been fired for no reason, and I did not take a camera into the room. And I remember what was told me. I've got a story about this too, to totally take the other side as well.
right.
The thing that occurs to me that probably does not occur to a lot of people a fair amount of people, is that an employer to employee relationship is actually a spiritual relationship of trust, where certain assumptions are made used to be made without having to spell things out. And now everything needs to be spelled out because we've
contracts
rejected spiritual. So there's no understanding and there's trust is eroded, which, tends to work against both sides in a situation like that. And so on the other hand, if you feel you're being fired for no reason, you feel like you're being singled out.
Right.
Who wouldn't want to bring attention to that and say, this is not the right way to treat people? And it so happens, right? That happened to me without mentioning specifics, but there was a company that I went to work for. And I basically, by this time I was a military veteran, college graduate, husband and father. It was the middle of the recession. I was like, I will take whatever work I can get and I will work my butt off. And so I did everything I knew how to do. Showed up early, went home late, worked, if I reached a lull in the action, I walked around that office and said, can I help you with something? Can I be useful? Can I, anything? And just shortly before I reached the probationary period, they told me, I'm sorry, it's not working out. We're going to have to end it. And I said, why? And I said, it's just not working out. I'm like, that's kind of vague. So I guess I have to leave then, right? And I never did get an explanation for that. Not from them anyway. I later had somebody who was familiar with that particular person shed some potential light on it, but again, I would be speculating openly here and not really sure that was the motive. At any rate, I can see both sides of that, and to try and circle it back to the topic that you proposed originally, Naomi, the professional thing, that for both of those situations was two halves of the whole pie, right? An employer has got to be, if you're going to be in charge of people, you have to be prepared to tell them, I have to end this relationship and here's why.
Yeah.
And if you're going to work for somebody, you have to be prepared to respect their, a certain degree of privacy and authority in that company, not civil authority, but authority as in, authority over their own private property, which happens to be their business.
Right.
And all of the circumstances that go on therein, unless they cross over into criminal and civil liability, in which case, whole different ballgame, but that's not necessarily what was happening there. So,
right. I actually had, I watched this video with a little bit of bias. Not necessarily.
We all do, by the way, Naomi.
Yeah. Because you shared the perspective of like an employer, like, oh my gosh, if they're going to be videoing when I'm doing that, like, I love that perspective. I had an experience where I had an employer who was quite personal with me, and how they would speak to me depended on their mood towards me. If I was ass kissing, they were casual with me. If I was holding boundaries and making sure that, because they told me from the beginning that they wanted to make sure they support. I was a work from home. I was a salesperson, and I was working for a friend, so I thought, and it was a situation where I felt like we had a really good personal relationship, and they were helping me at a certain point in time, and they told me that they wanted to make sure that I could put my family first, and I was dealing with a lot of family things at the time, and I wanted to, that was important to me. So I was like, they have my same morals, they have my back, they're supporting me in my family life. But when I did put my family first, when it was like, no, I can't stay up till 8 at night on this phone call with you because I need to put my kids to bed. I need to cook my kids dinner. The next day, the language would be very cold and abrasive and professional, and there wouldn't be that openness there, and it felt more of a punishment. And then when I would ask for, they wanted access to my LinkedIn messages. They wanted to hook up like an automated messaging system, and I asked for privacy that they didn't go in and look at that, even though it was the company hooked up, and I would be reaching out on behalf of the company. They would be, what, baby? Oh, you do have a spoon. Don't eat those. Those are acorns, though. That'll break your teeth. So I asked for privacy, and they were unwilling to give me that privacy in my personal messages. And when I asked for that privacy, their language got very professional. And when I was ass kissing, I could text them, I could call them anytime with any question on any project I was working on for them, and they would be available to me 24/7. But when I was saying, okay, I worked this set amount of hours that I already told you I would work, I fulfilled that. Now I am going to take care of my family now, or I would, oh, there's a spoon there. Or I would express I've done what I needed to do, and here's what I need now, or anything like that. Hey, sweetheart. Thank you. They would get, it felt like them being professional was more of a punishment and more like withholding a relationship. And so it was more like of a cold front. And so for me watching that video, it came across as someone like not willing to give information as a punishment because they weren't getting what they wanted. They weren't getting the ass kissing from an employee that they wanted. And so that's where I was like, that's the bias that I watched it with. And so I think the two sides to this are like, yes, there are the professionalness is you need to be open and upfront with information that needs to be there. You don't want to overshare, but you do need to share, like, if people aren't getting out of a theater and there's a bomb threat, it's like, there needs to be a way, like, there's obviously going to be a way to express, like, you guys need to get out. There is a malfunction, and we are concerned for safety, so let's hightail it on out of here. Like, let's get out in an organized fashion. There is a concern for safety. There's an urgency. Get out now, but you don't have to tell them exactly why. And then on the other side of that, you don't want to overdo it by creating a sense of panic of like, someone peed in the pool, get out of the theater, like, the pee's going to get on you if you don't get out of your seat, like, you don't want to do something weird and say something weird that doesn't make any sense just for the sake of urgency, And so I think that there's that level where people want to create that extra sense of, what's it called? Cooper, chill your face off, please. That extra sense of professionalism or authority in creating extra fear, which I felt like in my situation, I felt like that's what was there, is that extra sense of it. 1 second. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, sorry, I was a little bit rushed because there was a lot going on. So bringing it back, I feel like the two sides to this are an extra sense of authority, like an exaggerated sense of professionalism to create a sense of authority, out of desperation, versus the extra casualness to create a sense of camaraderie, and where that needs to be, because there needs to be that trust, right? And so if you come in as a professional and there's nothing built there, you need people to respect you. So there's an emergency, there is something urgent, get out of here. There's a sense of we are concerned for safety, so let's get out of here. You present very friendly, calm demeanor, friendly, but urgent, right? But then on the other side of it, like, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to be too friendly. It's like, hey, guys, you should think about getting out of here. you know? You don't want to do that either. And I think on my side, there was the sense of too much friendship versus exercising too much authority. And then where you were coming from, Jason, and with what you were dealing with, it felt like with your perspective, it seemed like on a professional side, like when you hire someone, you want to make sure that there's someone you can trust. And like with what Paul was saying, you need to make sure that there's that almost sacred trust, that mutual understanding.
So trust, you use the word trust, and trust is built on safety. Now, how's safety built, right? And I think some of the tenets of safety in terms of the workplace, are clarity and consistency.
Right.
Is someone clear about what they need, don't want, don't want? That builds trust. If an employer's clear, this is the standard, and then they change the standard a week from now, and then they change the standard another week from now, trust is significantly eroded, right? Consistency as well. When I show up, I'm generally the same individual. Nobody likes a Jekyll and Hyde scenario. So then there's all sorts of, I think, less important factors. And here's why I say that. And I'm speaking from a male perspective primarily, but only. How's that? That clarity and consistency can go a long way, even if you're a jerk. Right? At least I know. Right? At least I know you're never going to glad hand me and smile at me because I had a great weekend, because you don't care, but you do know that I do a good job, and I know that you want me to do a good job, and we get along at work. I'd never have coffee with you or drinks with you. Right? There are those types of people, and you want that relationship in certain situations, because that's the relationship to get stuff done. I had a lawyer once. I was interviewing a lawyer for something that needed to be worked on, and she was an absolute shark, well known, absolute shark. Now, the difference was that I needed somebody with a little more personal touch, due to the nature of what I felt needed to be done. She would have been fantastic in a court of law. I never would have been able to have lunch with her. It was just like, wow, we are oil and water.
Mm.
Would I trust her from a legal standpoint? 100%. Would I trust her from a personal standpoint? Yes. Would I, want to hang out with her? No. So I think some of this is, what is the expectation? And culturally, the expectation is quickly growing in our society that employers owe somebody a comfortable work environment, that we're going to be friends and I'm going to be coddled. And when my feelings are hurt, then you are responsible for my feelings. And that is a slippery slope. Mm-hmm. For instance, I had a manager working at a company that I owned once who was making significant errors in bookkeeping. And her husband worked there as well. And so I would go to this, we would have these discussions, and he kept telling me, "Bae, she's just so detail oriented. Man, I just love this lady. And she used to manage this other company, and she managed a grocery store chain. At one point in time, she was a manager of it. I don't even know. But he went on and on about how detail oriented she was. Now, from his perspective, she was really detail oriented, because he was really, really, really not. He was an absolute mess. And so if we looked at the scale of detail oriented, he's way down here, she's here, but the standard that anyone would accept for bookkeeping is way up here. Now, eventually, having tried to work with these two folks, I went to them and said, "This isn't working out. And in fact, here's $15,000 worth of errors that you've made in the past year." Which he, because he thinks she's so detail oriented, said, "Well, that's, she's trying her best. She must be something else wrong. Can't possibly be that she's not detail oriented." Now, my options are this. Hey, let's get into argument about how detail oriented she is. For a person who cannot understand it because he's so not detail oriented.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my position to educate. It's my position to get this bookkeeping done correctly. That's my position. Do I care about your feelings on a human level? For sure. I don't mean to hurt your feelings by telling you you're terrible, but you're terrible. Now, instead of doing that, we just say, wow, there's a lot of errors here. This has been going on for a while. We've tried our best to work through this. I couldn't tell you why these errors are occurring anymore. It's time for you to go. And absolutely, we got into a discussion about, well, but what about this one, about that? Yep. Time's passed on that. Goodbye. So I think another way to look at this particular scenario, with so little information, so much information being withheld,
right?
It could be because we don't know this. We don't know this nice lady.
Right.
And I'll give her the benefit of the doubt that she's a nice lady. We don't know her. And she could be one of those folks who is so ignorant of her own deficiencies when she's saying, but I've done a great job. She might not even know what a great job is. And they may have attempted to work with her. And now they've had to go the way of a very formal process because culturally, people can sue then for a wrongful termination because they weren't formal, because they told you too much.
I didn't think of that part.
So basically, to get rid of the bad apple, we have to tell you nothing, and you're going to complain about it. But that also is why you're a bad apple. And the last thing we want to do is to get sued for a wrongful termination and have to invite you back, even because the answer is culturally you're a bad fit, and there's some mystery to that because we're people. You know, you get along with people. What's the mystery that creates a friend? What's the mystery that allows you to let your guard down with some people and not others, only to find out that some are snakes in the grass and they bite you, and some people will go to the ends of the earth for you? What's the mystery in all that? The answer is don't invite it to the workplace. And if you do, be really, really, really careful. And when you build a company at scale, that the ability to bring in hundreds or maybe thousands of people, you just can't ferret out a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And so you just can't be a family because no family's that big.
No.
You know, so I think there's culturally an issue that people feel like we have to be like, I have to be read into all these things because somehow we're the family environment. Bullshit. We're not.
Yeah.
We're here to do a job. And then the other part of it is that you can't educate a person who doesn't want to look at themselves. And we don't even know, like this soundbite that we get on the internet. She clearly put that out there because she's got a bone to pick. She wasn't out there being like, well, there's better ways to do this. Of course, there are better ways to do everything. Why don't you start throwing stones in your little glass house? Right. There's a whole lot of wisdom to why she should never have posted that to begin with, because she's not absolved of responsibility for every other dumbass thing that she's done in her life.
There was more context to that video. She mentions in the video that many of her coworkers. Did my mute just? I didn't just mute that, did I?
No, you're fine.
Okay, I clicked a little bit. So, it's a flip to mute mic, so it can be testy. Anyway, so she mentioned that several of her coworkers had been dealing with getting fired out of the blue. And she mentioned that the people who were firing her, she had never met before. She had never worked with before. And she had also mentioned that when she had her reviews with her manager, that the feedback she was getting from her manager was all positive. So they were telling her that she wasn't doing a good job, but she also brought up, hey, look at my manager's reports. I've seen my manager's reports. I've heard what my manager said. I've seen the feedback. So she had been getting good feedback, positive feedback from in the professional setting. She had been getting good, positive feedback. And she was also recording because she was wondering if they would tell her, if she could get them to tell her. I also do agree with you that there's more context to it that we don't know. And there definitely could be legal reasons. But the bit of it was that she had been receiving good feedback, positive feedback from the people directly over her, and that what was the other bit? So there was like that extra reason, and she knew it was coming, and she was concerned. Out of curiosity, can wrongful termination happen if a company overhires and then needs to fire a whole bunch of people because they overhired? Because that was
Generally not, but
she brought up.
a person can bring a wrongful termination suit, and even if it's going to go nowhere, you can sue anybody for anything, really. It'll just get thrown out. But so I had a guy at one point in time come to me for some business advice. He's like, I want to start a carpet cleaning company. I said, are you sure about that? Why do you want to start a carpet cleaning company? He said, well, because I work for a carpet cleaning company, and last year I sold more. I think he said, we did more business, but I made less money. And I said, okay, well, are you sure you want to start a carpet cleaning business? Because there are all sorts of reasons that a company could look like it's doing well and it not be doing well. And you could be not making as much money. There's lots of reasons for that you aren't privy to because you don't own the business. Do you want that responsibility? And he said, well, I know that I should be making more money. All right, great. Well, how many carpet cleaning businesses are there in my town? And he's like, well, not many. So I did a quick Google search, turned the computer around. I was like, well, here's at least 8, 9, 10 that I can count just from a Google search. That's just this tiny little area. I said, so I don't think you've even done your research. And he then said, well, I already bought the truck. And I said, oh, gotcha.
No.
Well, you should have led with that. You already made your decision, and now you're looking for information to back it up. Okay. Now, he did go off and do his carpet cleaning company, which good for him. And he, struggle busted because obviously you're going to. It's a new startup in a crowded and very stable market, right? It's not like there's a lot of disruption in the carpet cleaning business.
Right.
So the reason I connect that there is he lacked some very significant information about what was happening on the other side and a whole lot of hubris. He had simplified business so much to the point that I scurry around more as an employee and I make more money and I'm doing a good job. And therefore the company owes me all of this stuff. That is a massive oversimplification. Mm-hmm. And he was working behind the scenes to, compete.
Be a competitor, yeah.
With this organization, and had already taken steps to do that. So a lot of complexity, a lot of oversimplification about something that he has never done before. And if that company had taken certain steps, they could have maybe kept him as an employee. Maybe they couldn't take those steps, or maybe they didn't want to. Mm-hmm. Who cares? It became unsustainable and he had to leave. If it was unsustainable and they had to fire him, let it be. And that's where I think, particularly in this type of instance, where it's this soundbite that goes out there, and the devoid of context, I look to, number one, we are missing so much information. Mm-hmm. And whatever she says might have no basis in reality because she doesn't know. She's never run that company. She's never been her manager. Mm-hmm. She's missing information and they are unwilling to tell her because it seems, and she just proved the point, whatever you tell her might be open to public scrutiny. So that's one of the last things a company wants. It could be that she stole secrets and was publishing stuff online. It could be that and here would be my point. Whatever she's doing publicly, she's probably doing privately. Mm. And so other employees, she might have great remarks. There are great marks. She might be a stellar employee and a real pain to work with. I've worked with people like that. Hey, you're doing a great job, but man alive, you've got to stop arguing. Yeah. You work here. If I tell you to scrub the floors in the bathroom because we all got to clean up for this event that we're having in 15 minutes, do it. Stop arguing. I'm willing to do it and I've done it. I've got other things to take care of. Don't argue with me. And there are all sorts of nuances that we don't know her. We don't know her personality. We know what she says, but what she says, what a person says about herself, there's no one more biased than her about herself. So she
Right.
thinks she's doing a great job. Who knows? Couldn't be proven.
Well, so
She had good remarks. Who knows? You don't know. She doesn't know either. She did not see her employee file.
I'm curious, Paul, you brought up the relationship, like the sacredness of the relationship between the employer and the employee. How would you feel I guess from the opposite perspective, how would you feel that? So I feel like Jason has brought in excellent points of how an employer could feel betrayed by this employee and how that could damage the employer's trust in the employee. How, with what happened to you, I feel like you have a bit of a unique perspective, and I want to hear, like, I guess, your philosophical take on what the trust would be like and what that would do to an employee in that situation.
Well, not to get, I don't want to go on a philosophical rant here at all. We have to say that at least once per episode, but
Right.
but I'm going to. No, I'm actually not going to rant philosophically. There's a couple things. Jason, first I want to get this one. I don't like it when employers or employees, I don't like it when employers try to say things like, we're family here. And now that we're talking about this, I'm starting to understand why. Now, the team that I've led the past few years are not employees, they're subcontractors, but I treated them very much like younger siblings in how I related to them. But I never told them that's what I was doing. I just did it, right? So I would get them on calls and I would inquire intentionally, but without any sort of nefarious motive or anything like that, as to how life was going for them and what was their biggest challenge and stuff like that. And the reason I did this was because I understand that if you take care of the soul of the person you're working with, the billable work you want them to do usually takes care of itself. So I believe very much in behaving that way. But anytime I hear an employer say, we're like family here, I immediately think of Michael Scott and The Office.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first person I picture because and we
So
laugh at it
unprofessional.
because it's, well, not only is it unprofessional, coming from him, it's totally insincere, right? Which is why it's funny. So anyway, now that I've said that, your question, Naomi, was poignant because, of course, I had to deal with that reality of being dismissed without much clarity or explanation as to why.
Yeah.
And, I had this refrain popping around in my head. But when I say it, if you're listening to this on the podcast version or you're watching it for the first time, you might think I'm only talking about this for employers. And the reality is it applies to both. So the saying is leadership is the problem and leadership is the solution. And, automatically most people's minds goes to, well, the employer is the leader in this case. So they're both the problem and the solution. No. Both the employer and the employee are both the problem and the solution. Potentially. You can be either one. You can be both at one time. You can be the problem and they can be the solution, but you always retain the ability to be both, either or both the problem and the solution. So the philosophical side of this, or should I say the philosophical outcome that I quickly realized before I went home, before I either lost my temper or went home with my head hung down in shame, was this is another one of those moments where I really need to trust in the providence of God with my future. And I I actually was saying goodbye to all the other people who worked there. And there's one guy, I walked into his office and, just sat down for a minute and told him that, and he was like, "Oh man, that's a shame." He was empathizing with me. And I said, "Yeah, I'm just going to have to trust God that this is, that I'm destined for other things, that there's something beyond this that I can't see."
Mhm.
And is that very easy to do when you're being, when you could easily feel like you're being, hoodwinked, or the wool is pulled over your eyes and that kind of thing? No, it's not easy to do, but it's what leaders would do. Whether you're in the employer position or whether you're in the employee position. I was in the employee position, but I decided I'm not going to give this thing the power to ruin my day or cause me to do something embarrassing. I'm going to take it on the chin, right? And say, "Oh, then God has something different for me, something better for me, something I can't even see right now. And if I stay here, I'm going to miss it." And so, thanks. It's been nice. Most of them were very nice to me. And the one person who made the decision to fire me, I'm like, "Have a nice life. Don't think I'll be, don't bother to write. I'll, you're not going to tell me. I'll just be on my way." So
But
I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking.
why not? How had you trusted that person before? Like, do you feel, I know you had a professional relationship with them. Obviously, you worked in the same place. Do you feel like that changed, or your trust, or your, I guess, your safety in that relationship? How do you feel like that was affected? Like, obviously they made the decision to fire you, but do you feel like, did you question their judgment? How did that play into, like, yes, we want to make sure that we are aware of any lessons that we can learn from it, but how did that affect, I guess, did you question their judgment? How did that affect how you saw that person and how you looked back on that professional relationship and the safety that you had, or did you feel safety there?
I would say that, as Jason is fond of pointing out, when you don't tell people what the story is, they make it up on their own.
Mhm.
And the only story I can really think was that I just didn't jive with the culture.
Gotcha.
And that's an easy thing for me to do because I've not jived with quite a few cultures in my lifetime. I'm a highly individualistic person. You add on to that, then this is, just a year or two after I left the military. So I'm used to serving in combat with rugged alpha dog male guys, who are always like bantering and ribbing each other and getting the job done and then shouting and screaming at times, I wasn't doing any of that, but I was bringing that essence into this very
Intensity.
bubble of, it was mostly women in the office, and I probably kind of scared some of them. I have to make up the details because no one would tell me what
Right.
I was really fired for.
Right.
I didn't feel unsafe. I'm like, this is far less unsafe than being fired at by Islamic terrorists.
Right.
But
I mean, like a psychological safety, though, I guess, I don't know. Is that a thing for men? Psychological, emotional safety in a work environment? Is that a thing for men, or is that mostly women?
Probably different than it is for ladies, though. It is, but it's not the same.
Gotcha.
But I didn't feel, if you mean like, did it suddenly click on that I need to be far more discerning about where I work? That didn't happen for me. Now I'm in my early 30s. These days it would. These days I would say to myself, you know what? I'm not just going to go and apply for any old thing. But that's the benefit of experience for me. That just wasn't a category for me when I was 31, 32. I was like, got to get a job.
Get back to this idea, Naomi, you said this is an experience for guys. And versus women. I think we have a male female difference, significantly so,
Right.
in how we perceive everything, every relationship. Right? Men typically perceive it in terms of function, and women perceive it, which is why you can get guys together who are from differing groups and get us to do something together, like accomplish a goal, and suddenly we feel like we're friends. And women are not that way. Women have to feel all of these things to then figure out if you're friends. And so in a lot of ways, feelings follow for men and feelings lead for women, which is why I think if you were to tally up the number of, hey, I was just fired videos on the internet, 99% of them are women, because they need to figure out how they feel about it based on how everybody else feels about it. Do you think this is fair? Do you think this is not fair? I need people on my side. I need people on my team. I need somebody to tell this. I got to say this to somebody. Whereas the guy's just like, you know what? Screw you. I'm going to go get a different job. Right? Or is just not going to say anything because he kind of, he's not going to announce his dirty laundry to the world. So guys are more likely to just work through their stuff
without having
and
to
women,
use the soundboard.
And women are absolutely going to, like I've talked to Paul about very important matters, and I'll say very pointedly, here's the issues that are coming up. And there's not a whole lot of feeling behind it. There's a lot of mental processing, weighing situations, right? And then it's like, oh, by the way, I need to remember my feelings. Whereas that's not generally true for many women. So add to that the cultural dominance, or increasing dominance, I think, of needing to feel good, and employers somehow having I think an overweight responsibility for that. Like, I had a guy once who was like, my hands get cold in the office. I could use a heated mouse pad. And I was like, whose problem that is? Yours. I had 25 years ago, maybe even more now. I was manager of a department of 15 people and a pretty large department in a national retailer. And a guy came up to me and said, I need a raise. I was like, why do you need a raise? He said, well, because I need snow tires for my car. And I was like, whose problem that is not? It is not mine. Also not the company's. I was like, did you do anything different? Are you going to do anything different for a job? Are you taking more responsibility? Are you working more hours? Like, what are you doing that the company cares about? Because the company doesn't care that you bought a fancy sports car in the middle of Northern Illinois that doesn't get good traction in winter. That was your choice.
Yeah.
Get your butt to work. Right? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, it would be like, well, I think the company should provide me a stipend to be able to get to and from work, because I've got a car that doesn't handle well in the winter. I mean, we've gone way over on the other side of the employer somehow has some emotional responsibility for you and how you feel. Yeah. And boy, wow, when we start making each other responsible for our feelings, that's a recipe for disaster interpersonally, for sure in the workplace, for sure with hundreds or thousands of employees, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to dumb it down to the lowest common denominator in some cases. And we're in a highly litigious society where someone's going to sue somebody for everything. And even if they don't sue them, they're certainly going to send it to the court of public opinion, who will. And they will cancel you without, and this speaks to our society and what a dangerous position we are in. We will cast our judgment with no facts whatsoever, only what that person says.
And represent and their emotion. And
they could be the absolute worst human being.
Yeah.
I've met people who are like, wow, you polish up really well, but behind closed doors, holy moly.
Yeah.
You are a destructive individual, and I should never have allowed you near my life.
Yeah.
That is totally true. And once people go through those scenarios, ideally they're like, wait a second, what responsibility do I have in this for hiring the bad apple rat versus,
Right.
Being like, oh my gosh, everybody's doing this to me.
Right.
We got a
There's
couple
some-
more minutes here on the community. We got about 4 or 5 minutes. We need to wrap this up to stay on our timeline. Naomi, what were you going to say?
Just kind of on the, I guess, kind of to bring it back a little bit.
Yeah.
I've loved this discussion, and I've loved Paul, with what you were saying about I love how you mentioned you mentioned that the numbers will come if the employees feel cared about, and I think something that I have noticed is that people take it upon themselves to teach other people lessons. And I think if someone has worked for you, if they worked for you and they felt cared about your company, and then they worked for an employer who they didn't feel cared about them, they might say to that employer, they might want their inclination may be to give pointers of how to make them feel cared about. And an employer, I think, could then in turn take it as, oh my gosh, they're thinking it's my responsibility to do this and this and this. Whereas I think there's a difference between taking responsibility versus entitling someone else to responsibility when you were previously cared about, like not previously taken care of. And I don't know how to express that per se in any kind of coherent way. I'm so tired. But what I'm trying to say is I feel like there is a sense of entitlement that people get when they are treated well, when they know what being treated well feels like, and they felt a sense of security there. They want that sense of security from other people, and they forget to look inside themselves to get that. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is company turnover. There are people who take really good care of their employees, and employees want that from all of their employers. If they got fired from a company, like with what Jason was saying, if someone was a bad apple at a company, that their employer took good care of them, they're going to go be a bad apple at a company and say that, hey, you should take good care of me like my other employer did. Well, yeah, your other employer also fired you because you weren't giving it back to the company.
Yep.
And so I think there's that sense of like the professionalism needs to go from employer to employee, just that sense of respect to employee, being upfront and transparent, but not being, I really like that you also mentioned that you don't particularly let them know. You didn't let them know that that's what you were doing, but you wanted to stay in tune and because you genuinely cared about them. And I think likewise, employees need to genuinely care about the employers and the company and believe in the company and have that respect the other direction as well. And I also love what Jason was saying about sometimes you need your employees to just, you mentioned this much earlier about sometimes you need your employees, you need them to like, no, don't ask why, you need to just do it. Like, I'm not gonna hold your hand while you just get the thing done without having an argument or a discussion about it. Just do the thing, There needs to be that sense of respect from an employee to an employer because there is that dynamic there. And so I really like how this discussion kind of encompassed all the different dynamics to it, the entitlement, the way to communicate. I don't know. I really love that it kind of encompassed all the facets to it,
Yeah, for sure.
Really good stuff. And I think, like you talk about, Naomi, it boils down to accept personal responsibility for your life.
Yes.
And if you have a need to live stream your life to people, be maybe a little critical with yourself and figure out, why do I have this need to invite the entire world into this matter? What does that say about me? Because you're the only person you get to live with. And after she gets let go from that place, she's going to go to someplace else. And then she's going to go someplace else. And if she wants to, and for the rest of us, so she's got work to do out for herself, like we all do. And then for the rest of us, I think suspend judgment. We don't know. We don't have enough information. And it's interesting that she wants to do that, but that's not, it's not something I'd like to take part in.
See you, Paul. Thanks for
joining us, Paul.
Thanks, dude. Thanks for
this can go on for a long time.
I was gonna say I feel really offended because you said that not everyone is perfect. Everyone has work to do. I was like, I'm offended I don't feel safe in this environment because you insinuated that I have work to do on myself. Hell no, I don't. I'm perfect.
Right. Well, this is a fantastic, I think, a fantastic conversation, and maybe something worth digging into, Naomi,
Yeah,
is
I'm like,
looking at some of these things that appear, memes or videos or whatever. Let's pull some of those back and maybe we play them and live stream them and say, here's what's circling around. Let's pick this apart. Because I think a lot of people are dealing with each of those things from time to time.
Right.
So thank you for this topic, Naomi. This was really great.
Thanks for letting me bring it up in the scattered way I did.
Hey, say something, start anywhere. That's the key.
Right.
This is the Thinker Growth community here at the Thinker Business Accelerator. And today we were joined with faculty members Naomi Ahlstrom and Paul Edwards. I'm Jason Todd. And if you have a product, service, or message that you think is going to change the world, hey, let's get good at doing that. Join at thinkergrowth.com, and we will see you next time.
Bye.